This is Ben Hemsley. Last month I released a tune called Tidal that's 10.5 minutes long, and today I'm going to walk through some of the elements of the tune and how I came up with the structure, and just try and give you some, hopefully try and give you some tips and tricks that help your productions, and hopefully you get something out of it. I'm going to start off with the kick and bass, which is kind of simple. The kick is just a standard trance kick. And I had Infected Mushroom Pusher. By the way, this is a plugin by Waves and Infected Mushroom. It's called Pusher, and it's just pretty much compressing and saturating the kick drum and just beefs it up a bit. And we've got the offbeat, which is the main bass in the track, which is just from my old sample pack, and it's a one shot, and cutting out some of the lows because I layered it with a sub. And I use this plugin by Waves called Vitamin, which is a multi-band plugin where you can, it sort of like spices up the sound, and instead of, if I want to exaggerate some frequencies, like a band of frequencies, instead of just EQing, this like compresses and saturates that band of frequencies all with like one dial. I'll show you the difference of it on and off. So if I'm really trying to exaggerate a thing, instead of just boosting it on the EQ, this will like saturate that band of frequencies. It's like, it's absolutely class. I use this on a lot of stuff, and I think you'll see this on the vocals and the leads as well. Underneath the offbeat one shot, we'll have a triangle wave coming from Diva, which is a plugin I use a lot, especially when it comes to like the low end subby stuff I did on Why. It just sounds more analog than any other plugin, and it's a lot, it just has so much bottom end and really warm bottom end as well. So it's just a triangle wave, drop down a few octaves. The cut off, because you can't really get a pure triangle wave, you can always hear a hint of the sawtooth coming through on the oscillator there. So I use the cut off to just get rid of the shine of the sawtooth that sort of pops through. And I use the JJP bass plugin, which is also in the Waves bundle, which is just compressing it a bit. And so, well, it's just like a bass amp plugin. It's beefing it up again. So that's a kick and bass. The percussion. There's nothing really special about percussion either. I feel like most of the elements in trance is about the musical elements rather than the actual, like the percussion. Don't get us wrong, you can get some like tech trance stuff which has like a bit more of a groove to it, but this isn't the vibe I was going for on this track. So we'll just have a simple top loop here, a clap with some delay, a hi-hat, and a ride, and all together. I did this in a tutorial a few years ago on the Crest Me track, and I always use this plugin on me drum groups called Decapitator, which is a Sound Toys plugin, which is like a emulator of like some old saturation units, hardware. This AENTP, these are all like emulators of like old saturation units, and I can't remember which one specifically these are, but just want to drive up a bit and had this setting on E. Just to bring them to the front of the mix a bit. I'll put it on with the bass as well so you can hear the difference. It's definitely a lot crispy. It's definitely bringing it up to the front of the mix a bit more. But the main part of this track, right, I built this track from the ground up, and I really wanted to lay the foundations. I got sent these vocals by Theo, who's a good friend of mine who I write a lot of me vocals with. I wasn't actually in the session where these vocals were recorded. The song wasn't actually originally going to be a Ben Hemsley track, but Rose Gray was working on some music with Theo, and they wrote this vocal, and he sent it to me saying, is there anything you want to do with this? And I love the vocals, and I dragged it into Ableton, and I thought, right, I instantly knew it was going to be like a long dramatic piece of music, and it was definitely going to be trance, and it was going to have like the Delirium, Silence, Tiesto vibe, and I wanted to stand the test of time, so to speak. So I started to build it up from the ground upwards, and when it comes to making trance like this, I always start with the textures, like the hidden textures that I will like play throughout the full song. Once you've got the mood right, you know what else is going to be added. And you know, you can hear it in your head instantly once you've got them, well, I can personally, once you've got them textures going, you can hear everything else, and you can start putting that away. So I find it a lot easier than doing it before rather than after, because it's hard to fit stuff in the mix. The first texture I found was actually this ad-lib from Rose's recording. So I warped that little bit there. And looped it. See, that runs all the way through the track, and obviously it's got a filter going up and down on it. I had this M1 like texture. And also I wanted it, because the meaning of the song is like something about being tidal, like up and down, like a wave. I wanted something that like really did feel like it was going up and down, and I wanted to create a piece of music that had that with a lot of the elements. And this it's just a preset I found on the M1, and it just modulates very, very slowly in pitch, but also sticks to the G note, which is the root note of the track. And I had this windy one from Spire, again just going up and down quite dramatically, this one, but it's very quiet in the mix. And I feel like already the track has some sort of intensity to it. So like I could already from that moment I could start feeling like what else is meant to be around there. So when I had these textures going, I knew I was going to write the main chords now, which ended up turning into melody. So I played this very, this is just the process. I know it's not that important, but I played it loud through the speakers and walked through there to my piano, where I just started playing around till I found something that felt right to me and the textures that I had created. And this is where obviously I came up with the bass idea, because it just follows the progression, just the bottom note of the chords. Then I came up with so then it was just following the chords that I'd picked. You didn't need a piano to do this, all you need is a MIDI keyboard or your fucking head, because you can draw it in Ableton, or you could probably play them simple chords on your keyboard from your Mac, but it was just the actual process I wanted to show. I had that on loop, because I always liked to write on this piano. So when I did have the chords and they sounded right, I needed to double check them and make sure they were going to sound right over the vocal, which I'm sure they were, because they were in key, and I could already play the vocal in my head over the top of them chords, and the chords better. We both lie wide awake. Very simple, but that's all that was needed for this, I think. The only thing is, and this came down to laziness and just being too busy on tour, I really wanted to record the pads through the 8080, and if you don't already know, the 8080 is quite an old synth. It's from like the mid-90s or something, and it was like one of the first synths that had like the super saw function, which is basically just loads of sawtooths alongside each other detuning, which creates that big trancey sound. This was used back in the day on all the trance classics that you love. And it has its own tonality. I know you can have the super saw on loads of synths now, but this does have its own character, and I just love it. And there's a reason I'm still using it rather than software. But the reason I didn't use it in the pads here is because I was just too busy at the time, and I really regret it. And I'm probably going to go over it and replace the file on Spotify with these recorded, because it just sounds so much better than pads that are coming from like Serum or Spire. When you're a producer, I think you'll be able to notice the difference. So I'm going to show you how I would go about making that sound on here. Got to connect it to the thing. There we go. So what I like to do first when I'm making the pad is I want to get the actual swell right, which is the shape of the envelope. Sorry, I'm just going to turn the vocal off while I concentrate on the sound of this. So I'll make the filter envelope, copy the amp envelope just to get the swell, but it's just going to do the swell on the depth of the filter, modulation. But like I say, this was the first synth, I think it was the first synth that had the super saw function, where you can have multiple amounts of sawtooth waves playing side by side. So you can hear the amount of the sawtooths increasing here with this knob. Then we can detune them from one another. And I think a lot of the character from this comes from the tone control. It's so like, because this is a digital synth, it's not analog, but it has its own character and it's absolutely unreal. It's a proper gritty, super saw 90s trance sound. So if I play this compared to just kicks its arse, it's 10 times better. So I am definitely going to replace it at some point and get Spotify, Apple Music, etc. to replace the file, because it sounds way better with that. This is where that sound was made originally. There's also a virus down here which was quite good for that shit, but I think the virus was actually after the 8080. It's a bit dusty and it hasn't been put on the rack yet, but it will be. I think this is better for the really detuned saws, like fucking the hardstyle screeches and stuff. I think this is it's a very Dutch bit of kit. A very Dutch bit of kit, that. So obviously we'll have a sub here as well, here in the pads. Again, which is just a triangle wave from Diva. Nothing special going on there. The synths, the lead synths, were a waves plugin called Elements. And that's just following the chord progression. And that's just a patch I found on Elements. And this is the main, like, your Mandarin high gate lead. He's the person who influenced us to make this sound, because he used it in a few of his tracks, and I'd been trying to find out how to make it for ages, and I found a preset on Elements that sounded quite similar, and I thought, oh, maybe if I change the pulse width modulation on the sawtooth here, it'll nail it and put some chorus on, and it did. And I wanted to redo the sound in a different plugin, because on Elements, for some reason, I think the envelopes are a bit twitchy and I couldn't get the complete control I wanted on it. I don't even know what's making the sound like that. So I'm quite good at sound design as well, but there's something really twitchy that you change the slightest thing on here and it changes the sound completely. So I haven't been able to recreate it in a different plugin yet, and I want to use the sound from my own tracks for the time being, so I'm not going to share that just yet. The only person I would share it to is the genius that is Amanda, who originally created this sound. But I can't show you the processing, which is vitamin again. You can really boost them highs with this plugin, man. It's like, it's so good. It just makes like stuff like that fucking crispy as shit. We had other things, like obviously just like basic sweeps, which are like vengeance stuff. And a little bit of thunder there. This rise has just detuned saws and serum. Pitching up there. I didn't want to clean up the song too much. I think a bit of like grittiness and stuff clashing is good for the track because it fills in them missing like harmonic structures of the tune, and like I think sometimes nowadays production's a bit too clean and it takes away the humanness because it's too clean, it's too polished. So I liked this being a bit clashy. That's pretty much all the synths and all the elements of the track. There's not actually that much going on for it being a 11-minute tune. I did have other versions where I had more layers and more going on, but it started to take away from the soul of the track that I started with at the start, with all them textures and stuff, and you couldn't really hear them, and it became too much. Sometimes less is more, and when you get the perfect elements, you don't need to stack loads of shit on top of each other. So that was it, and the structure was just adding and subtracting till that section got boring. But because everything was modulating so well off each other and all the textures were right, it was quite hard to get boring. It was just like a nice euphoric vibe throughout the track. I was constantly just trying to get that feeling of a wave moving throughout the track. That was the idea in my head since hearing the vocal, and I think I nailed it. And sometimes I don't nail it, and sometimes I have deeper meaning in the songs like that, and I can't get the idea from my head into the software, and it's the most frustrating thing ever. And I think every producer's the same, and sometimes we release stuff that we're not fully happy with, but I've completely got there with this track, and I'm so happy with it, except not recording that. One other thing I forgot was the outro, which is ABL free. Just a pattern that drew in, well, programmed in, which is a 303 emulator. And to be honest, I don't really notice much difference from the old 303s and software 303s now. I personally can't hear it. I know a massive 303 fan might. Processing, just got a bit of flanger on there. A waves flanger. But that's pretty much all the elements. I hope you took something from this project. I know all the elements are quite simple, but I think the important thing about production is to just stick with your gut on things, and if it sounds right already, you don't need to overcomplicate things, which I was doing for a year to this track. I was like, it has got enough, but then I was thinking it doesn't need any more. It's perfect the way it is with these few elements. So that's the main thing I think you can take from this track. Hope you've enjoyed it and hope you've took something from this. Thank you very much, and cheers for all the love and support on the tune.